Hey guys! So Mike the Vegan recently put out a video called Do I Cherry Pick Studies? And since I have accused him of cherry picking, I have a video basically called Mike the Vegan Cherry Pick Studies in reference to his oil video. I figured I would respond to this, and he also does mention me a couple times in this video. So here we go. So Mike starts the video correctly identifying, defining cherry picking.
Cherry picking is, of course, choosing that piece of evidence that supports your argument and ignoring any information to the contrary, a bit like picking particular cherries off of a tree.
But then he says this.
An argument isn't by definition invalid because only one side is presented. Let's say I'm arguing that gravity exists and I only choose examples of why it exists. I don't argue for the other side of why it doesn't exist. I don't say, but what about bubbles? My argument would not be invalid. Gravity would still exist. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but there's no evidence for the other side. There's no evidence that gravity does not exist. The other side, the pro-gravity not existing side, is obviously ridiculous. This is not what I and others have accused Mike of doing in some of his videos, namely this one, his anti-oil, vegan, the oil killer video, where he presents a case for avoiding all oils based on just a handful of studies. This would be fine if most of the literature, if the bulk of the evidence came to this conclusion, supported Mike's claim that oil is the vegan killer, that oil is bad for us. But as I detailed in my response, certain oils, like olive oil and canola oil, they're healthy. The research is pretty clear that these are healthy foods.
And imagine all of this in the court of law. The judge being like, Mr. Lawyer, since you only presented arguments on your client's side and did not argue for the other side, even though your arguments were all technically correct, your client is hereby guilty as charged.
He's trying to say that being one-sided isn't necessarily a bad thing, but this example is really puzzling to me. I don't really understand it because a court case doesn't just involve statements from the defense. It also obviously involves statements, arguments from the prosecution. So a judge asking a defense attorney to essentially argue against his client would be really weird because someone is already doing it. The prosecutor is already doing that. That's their job. So, a judge and a juror are getting both sides. They aren't just hearing a one-sided argument. It's a little confusing. So Mike then goes on to give this hypothetical. So each cherry represents a study on eggs. The 4 rotten cherries or studies, these found that eggs are good for us, and these studies were funded by the egg industry. And then the 5th study that was independently funded found that eggs are bad, that they contribute to atherosclerosis.
So we're looking at a lot of rotten cherries, and we have to ask the question, is it better to not pick those rotten cherries, or should I be picking those rotten cherries and presenting them in an effort to appear unbiased?
So I don't want to get into whether or not a study is invalid just because it is industry funded. So let's just assume that these 4 rotten studies are really rotten. They're bad studies. They're poorly constructed. They wanted to show that eggs actually lower LDL, so they compare them to a butter diet, something ridiculous like that. Then no, those studies should not be considered. They should not be included in an analysis of egg nutrition. Just like we wouldn't expect an analysis of the effects of climate change to include an article by some rando with the conservative anti-science agenda. But again, this is not what Mike is being criticized for, at least not by me. The comments that he shared earlier in his video from people accusing him of cherry picking were really silly and ridiculous, and I can't pretend that I'm surprised that he chose to show those instead of some of my criticisms. Mike's video is not an example of what he described before with the egg hypothetical. It's not a case of ignoring faulty research to come to an, honest conclusion that oil is unhealthy. Instead, it's a case of ignoring high quality research to come to a conclusion that he likes, that oil is unhealthy.
But the reality is that we live in a world of one-sided arguments, so you have to decide whose argument is actually more sound and what their motivations are. For example, do they have an evil vegan agenda where they want to save animals and help the environment and people get healthy? Or is it coming from somebody who just really wants to keep eating bacon, or the animal agriculture industry, or industry in general?
So someone who makes money promoting veganism, who makes money, spreading an anti-oil message, couldn't possibly have any other motivation for doing this besides helping the animals and other people. I'm not saying that Mike is only motivated by money, not at all. I definitely do not believe that. But to suggest that there is no other incentive for him, for myself, for any other vegan activist who is on YouTube monetizing videos, making money, that's pretty ridiculous to me. I think it's reasonable that viewers should be a little bit worried about this, whether they're vegan or not. You know, no one is perfect, and we're all subject to this to varying degrees. The possibility is there for all of us for, you know, making certain decisions. In this case, maybe making certain videos or structuring our content in such a way that it benefits us financially. We make more money. We may be doing this without even realizing that we're doing it. I really think that we as YouTubers, as content creators, as people who make money doing this, whether it's vegan activism or really any kind of activism, I think we need to be honest with ourselves that this is possible for us, right? That our content could be driven, at least partially, by financial gain. Because if we're not honest, if we delude ourselves, how are we going to prevent it from happening?
But if you ever do think I am misrepresenting data, absolutely feel free to let me know, specify the point and the study.
Here you go.
Here is the LDL of people on a butter diet, and here is the LDL of people on a coconut oil diet. As you can see, it looks better. So you can spin it as a healthier alternative. But the reality is they both raise LDL from the participants' already dangerously high baseline at the beginning of the study.
So what Mike conveniently leaves out here is that the study also used safflower oil in the third part of the trial, and that this lowered LDL from the baseline at the start of the study. It did so well that by the 4th week into safflower, when they measured, it made up for the previous months of butter and coconut oil, reaching an average of 3.5 down from an average of 3.57.
Let's talk about vegan versus vegan conflict, which brings me to my oil video in which quite a few people did accuse me of cherry picking. Firstly, yes, that was a one-sided argument in response to the one-sided argument that we constantly get that oil is a health food. We are constantly exposed to that notion.
So just because we constantly hear one side of an argument, it doesn't mean that there's another side that's equally valid and is worth hearing. We can look at the Daily Stormer, you know, over there, all they're doing is telling their side of the story. They're just responding to a societal one-sided argument. Yeah, they're still wrong. Mike's side is in opposition to the consensus, which is that certain oils like olive oil are healthy. And this is based on mountains of evidence, which he ignores. That's why he's wrong.
And if you did have a problem with my cherry picking in that video, then ask yourself, did you also have a problem with the completely one-sided argument of articles like this that just rattle off benefits of coconut oil, for example?
Yep.
Probably not, and that's because you want oil to be healthy. I would love for oil to be healthy. It would be so much easier to just say, you can go vegan, eat all of the oily mock meats and fried food that you want, and you will be perfectly healthy.
Well, this is awkward. First, I don't believe that coconut oil is a superfood. I made that clear in my response to Mike, that there's a big difference between oils like palm and coconut and canola and olive. Second, this is just weird, but there's a big difference between, what did he say, oily mock meats and fried foods and like a salad with an olive oil vinaigrette. I mean, I've never heard anyone say olive oil is healthy, so donuts are too. I don't think that's a thing.
I do not feel that it's ethical to tell people that, for example, coconut oil is healthy when there are studies taking people who are on a standard American diet approaching the cholesterol ceiling and it still raises their LDL.
It would be nice if Mike would respond to those of us who don't think coconut oil is a health food. Instead, he seems insistent on presenting like only, there are just two sides. You know, you're either anti all oils or you're pro-coconut oil. I'm pretty sure, in fact, I know that there are some of us who are pro some oils, not all oils. In fact, that is the consensus. Very few people promote an anti-oil, generally anti-oil message or a pro-coconut oil message.
And furthermore, this is a bit of a touchy point, but I think it is very disingenuous to pretend to be unbiased. Imagine if I was like, meat causes cancer, but it has many health attributes like protein. That is super icky, and I think at the root of why so many vegans fervently oppose unnatural vegan, because she will go out of her way to actually argue against the ethics of veganism, presumably her own ethics, to seem unbiased to meat eaters and hopefully persuade them. And people really don't like when people aren't authentic. It just bad taste in your mouth.
So I'm not sure that this part is even useful to respond to. You know, Mike thinks I'm inauthentic. Like, what can I say to that? All I can say is, no, you're wrong. Like, move on. I mean, it's like, you know, people saying I'm a fake vegan and I'm a shill. Like, what? Okay. I will say that I've never pretended to be completely unbiased. I do try to be, but I'm not delusional. I know I'm not perfect. Just like I'm aware that making money doing this adds some amount of risk. You know, it's a little bit of a barrier to ultimately what I'm trying to do, which is to be honest and accurate. I'm aware of that. I guess all that I'm really getting from this, from Mike, is that, you know, we can't be unbiased, so why even try? You know, it's not something that you can achieve, so why bother? You're just a hypocrite, you know, for even trying. It reminds me of Nikocado when he decided to start eating meat again. That's one of the things he said was about suffering and how there will always be suffering in the world, that going vegan, we can't stop it. And that was the attitude, like, why even try? This is the world, we might as well not even try.
This world will never be victimless. No matter how hard we try, it will never ever be victimless.
So we should stop trying to make a difference? Let's say you could end one person's suffering by making a small change, even though countless other people would continue to suffer. Wouldn't you still value that change? Wouldn't you still want to make that change to help that one person?
Going vegan is still reducing that suffering. It's still making a difference, and it still matters. And I think it's still making a difference, and it still matters if we try to be unbiased.
But I do hope that everybody understands that it is not logical to determine that oil is a health food because some dude only presented facts on why it's not healthy.
Yeah, I would be interested to see who's doing that. I mean, maybe he got some comments on his video suggesting that, but I'm definitely not, and I don't really appreciate being kind of lumped in with this as if I'm saying that, because that was not what I said in the video at all. You know, some oils, like olive oil, are healthy because the overall evidence clearly suggests that they are healthy. It has nothing to do with Mike and his video. It's puzzling to me why Mike included me in his video at all. I mean, I get the part where he mentions me specifically and says that I'm not authentic, you know, whatever, but including the screenshot of my criticism, I mean, it kind of implies that he's responding to me, and yet all of the criticisms that he responds to, like the coconut oil being healthy, like that, these are not arguments that I've made. So I'm a little confused, but he did end his video, or at some point in the video, he said that he's considering, or I think he is doing a follow-up video to his oil video, so hopefully he'll actually consider the criticisms that I made, so we'll see. So in answer to the question that Mike asked at the beginning of the video,
do I cherry pick studies, and are vegans wrong because they cherry pick studies?
Are anti-vegans wrong for cherry picking studies on nutrition in order to paint veganism in a negative light, in order to make vegan diets look unhealthy? So then why is it okay when vegans do it? Because they're vegan? Because they're part of our tribe? They're one of us? That makes it okay? I just can't agree with that. Cherry picking, misrepresentation, which is ultimately what it is never okay. It's never okay when the meat industry does it. It's never okay when anti-vegans on the internet do it. And it's never okay when vegans do it. Relying on only a handful of studies to support an anti-oil message while ignoring the mountains of evidence showing the opposite, showing otherwise, this is wrong, whether it's intentional or not. So I guess that's it. It's a very weird video from Mike, I have to say, just in terms of, I mean, he doesn't even really say in terms of oil that like the consensus is wrong. He just kind of says that like that's the one-sided argument that's being pushed down our throat, and he's just presenting the other side. But I don't know, it's kind of weird to me. He's not like saying that he doesn't say anything about the evidence that he's ignoring. Again, he says he's doing a follow-up video, so maybe he'll touch on that. I hope he will. It's just very weird to me. I don't know. To me, it just sounds like, yeah, I'm presenting only some of the evidence. So what? Like, it's not a problem. It's like, it's kind of a problem in a case like this when you are ignoring so much. You're ignoring the experts and the consensus in the science, that's a huge problem. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Subscribe, that's nice. It's a song now. That's obnoxious. I'm sorry. Subscribe if you want to. You can support the channel, patreon.com/unnaturalvegan, and I will have a new video very soon.